So, welcome everyone to the latest edition of I don't even know what we call this podcast anymore. It's Templar Talks, Templar Tangents. Who knows? But welcome to the latest edition. It's a very special episode. We're doing things a little bit differently, and we've got a guest on, a very special guest indeed. It is Jari from the European Unity League. So, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, and I think I didn't make an event, then I got ill at another event, and then work happened, and it's just taken so long. We thought, let's just hit Discord and have a chat, because I think what you're doing is amazing, and I think with that said, I'll hand off to you for an introduction to yourself and both what the league itself is as well.
Thank you, Steven. Well, yeah, so I'm Jari Rentsch. I'm the founder of the European Unity League. We're a new type of tournament series where basically any event from like the smallest FNM or weekly event up until like the very, very biggest regional championship, but also like unofficial events like the Axion Now Mega Moderns or other like opens kind of events can participate. And all of those events will award points. Players can sign up to collect those points, and then at the end of the year, we will host a national championship in each of the countries. And if you're in usually the top 40 players of your country, you can qualify for this national championship. And from there on, you can win invites to our 20,000 euro finals, the European Magic Cup, that we will host in Bologna early next year, early 2026. And it will be a team championship, so it's going to be similar to the World Magic Cup, how it used to be in the past, where national teams with different countries will participate. But there's also going to be an individual section where you pick your favorite format, be it modern or pauper, or a third format that will is announced soon. And yeah, we'll also like crown an individual format champion, but also like the European champion team at the end of the year.
Nice. It feels Bologna is a very fitting venue as well, because I feel that's kind of like almost the home of Magic at this point in Europe. So it's cool to have the kind of the grand finale there. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think there's also the Eternal Weekend there this year still, and there's like the Four Seasons, of course, and there's been like the RC this year also there. So I mean, there's like a lot of like attention, and also the city, and like a lot of players that know it well, play in the region and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of actually participating in the league, how do players go about that? Because I've seen the leaderboards all over Twitter. I think is Myra still up there at the moment?
I actually don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Who is like the number one of Europe? Myra's been like always clinging to the first rank, but I think it might actually be one of my Swiss friends.
Oh, okay.
Who's currently number one, because we've started this league in Switzerland actually, and that's where I'm from. And for this reason we already have like a lot of infrastructure there, like a lot of organizers. So like for the Swiss players, it's just a bit easier to grind a lot of like RCQs and weekly events, because all of those results are already reported in the system.
For sure.
So that's why, they tend to be. Like a lot of them tend to be like at the top of the European leaderboard, but in the end, like it's not that relevant like who's the best in Europe. For you to like qualify for your nationals, you have a separate leaderboard for each country where only players of your country, or at least that play events in your country, show up.
Yeah.
So this kind of like balances out the competition quite nicely, because in your country probably everyone has about the same opportunities to participate in events and collect roughly the same amount of points. Of course, if you're that eager to travel to all the regional championships and to across Europe, you probably have a bit of a head start. But I mean, if you were that enthusiastic about spending a lot of money on flight tickets, then I mean,
yeah, that's your prerogative. I mean, I think as a player, I think not to. I don't want to. It's one of those things, right? I don't want to be all praise, because it feels like when you're doing an interview of one of these things, it feels like it's too fake. But genuinely, I think you fixed one of the biggest issues with regional championships already by doing individual country leaderboards. Because I remember, I think it was a couple of seasons ago now when it wasn't Fanfinity, it was I can't remember the name of the last company. Legacy were running the regional championships in the in Europe, and there was one season where I think the UK got maybe like less than 10 RCQs, and other countries would get like 100. So it was it's one of those things of the attendance was super high, and you go to a local RCQ and there'd be 64 of the best players that you see at every Axion event, and usually at the Pro Tour kind of level, trying to get one slot, which is always doesn't feel too good. So I think that's a really great way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like originally why we started our system is because we were kind of an association. We were like a group of friends that ran some like local 1K events right after COVID ended, I would say. Like I think it was like early 2022 or something like this, like something like April or something. And one thing that we noticed basically once the regional championship circuit started, we, as a non-official body, we were not a company. We were not able to, as we were not a store, we couldn't run any RCQs, and it felt a bit unfair that we were like left out of all this awesome competitiveness. And so we thought, all right, let's just found our own tournament circuit.
Yeah.
And have and also like basically pick on where kind of the current system kind of like misses. For example, like consistency doesn't really matter. Like the only thing that matters, like either you win the RCQ or you go home with a couple of promo cards.
Yeah.
And so we noticed kind of like, Magic is a game of a lot of variance. So like even if you're the best player, it's really hard to win an RCQ. Even if like the average player is maybe significantly worse than you, you still like have a very, very high chance of not winning the RCQ in the end.
Yeah.
And so for everyone, it felt like there was a need for like a different system where you would collect points over the course of all of the events. And we've talked to a lot of players and organizers and optimized the system throughout the 2 years that we've been running it since I think we started in January 2023, if I remember correct.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the way it works is we have different tiers of events which have a different multiplier, similar to like how Planeswalker points used to work. So we have local events which have a 1x multiplier, and the everything from like pre-release, FNM, any kind of weekly league usually falls into that spectrum. And for like more competitive events, like a 1K or like an RCQ or a Storm Championship, we have the regional tier. It basically gives you a 3 times multiplier and some additional bonus points for the top finishers. And the stores, we charge the stores like a small fee of €1 per player, which is basically then used to finance the national finals, but also the European Magic Cup to some degree. And but you can of course also host a weekly event as a regional if you want. It's a kind of, we don't have like a clear distinction.
I was going to say, I think when I looked at because you've got a really useful, how to participate as a store guide, and I think the weekly FNM events are free to input as well. So like even if a store wants to do a premiere event and add more points, per player, there's still the option to run your like regular events at the lower tier as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we basically have like these 2 tiers, and in theory, you can choose any event can have any tier as the organizer wants. And the lowest tier is completely free. So if an organizer doesn't want to contribute anything to the league because they think the interest is not high enough for the points, then they can just run all of the events like from FNM to RCQ as a local event. But if they want to support the league, they can put in a bid in basically the league prize pool for this country, and the players get more points and recognition for out of it.
Nice. Yes. No, it's all very exciting as a competitive player. I spoke to you briefly about it before, but it seems like there's been a lot of kind of bad news coming from WotC directly. So it's really great to see that there's other systems available, and there's still competitive Magic players kind of have that opportunity to compete at high level for very significant prizes as well. But I guess obviously kind of going back to your intro a little bit. When did you kind of first start getting into Magic? Because I assume I started playing in 2019, 2020, just before COVID hit. So I missed the glory days of kind of GPs and when comp Magic was kind of at its heights. When did your kind of journey into Magic start, and what effectively, I guess, led you to, I know we've covered it a bit in terms of like providing what isn't available through other means, but what kind of really spurred you on to start the league?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very long story, but to keep it short, I think I was about 11 years old, and now I'm 28. So that's like 16 years ago when I started just to play the kitchen table level Magic. I think it was back in Alara block, or a bit before that. So it was like 2007, 8, I think, 9, around that time.
Yeah, I mean, I've missed even blocks since I've been playing. Like, there's been no consistency at all of any product that's come out, really. So yeah, that sounds like a much better time to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I started with this, and I think the first set where I really like jumped in was like Innistrad, the old Innistrad. The first one with like Snapcaster, and it was like was like an awesome standard format to play, honestly, because you could play like Delver and Ponder and Gitaxian Probe and Mana League in standard, and it was pretty amazing. And then but we were really spoiled back in the time. And Snapcaster Mage, of course, was also legal, because like afterwards, kind of standard stopped feeling like legacy for a few years. Or I guess it never recovered. But that was pretty amazing when that wasn't standard. But yeah, so I started more of as a casual player, I guess, and then. But back in the time, as I said, the focus of Visits of Coast to Coast was more like you would play the standard and modern and all of these formats. So yeah, I basically played modern more or less since the inception. And yeah, the focus was more on like the person that plays one versus one once a week in the FNM or at the game day. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, this was like an event similar to the store championship, I guess.
I think there used to be cool playmats and stuff as well, didn't there? Kind of, it was a bit more exactly of an event.
Yeah, so basically you would the set would come out. You will play a bit of standard, and then you would go to game day and battle. And now these days it's like very different, right? We all know like the focus is really on commander and casual, and people like don't really play that many tournaments anymore. So yeah, I grew up in this kind of area, or this kind of time, and then once I got older, I think it was like 17 years old, I started to play GPs as well. And I think when I was 18, 19, so that must have been like around 2017, 2018, 16, I think 2016 to 2018, 19, where I played really a lot of GPs. I think one year I played like 10 Grand Prix.
Oh, wow.
Across Europe.
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
I was like... I managed to top 8 one Grand Prix, and I got like 17 pro points that year, but you needed 20 to make a silver pro, so I barely missed it. But it made like a big impact kind of on my experience. I really loved to play Magic competitively, and also like getting to play the Pro Tour once. I mean, it was called Mythic Championship back then, I guess.
But it was still...
That was...
Yeah.
It was still the real thing.
Yeah. I think that's it for me as well. Like, not even necessarily just relating to Magic, but if there isn't the competitive side of a hobby, I find it a lot less interesting. I think for me, that's why I've always struggled so much with Commander, and I actually started playing Magic through Commander. So I guess I will always be thankful for that. But I quickly moved into CEDH, which is just a stupid format, to be completely honest. Like, it's great, but it just doesn't work really. And then I, found I think Modern was the only event I could attend weekly, so that was my first format, and I never really looked back, because I think without that competitive edge, it just makes it a lot less interesting. People always take gameplay a lot more seriously when there's stakes, and I think the competitive scene definitely has that in terms of what I'm looking for a hobby. But yeah, so obviously leading from that, you started the league after COVID. So I can't remember the exact history of Magic. Like you mentioned, the Mythic Championship. I think the Pro Tour ended in the late 2010s, like 2018-ish. And then I think they introduced the Mythic Championship, and then I think that then went on hold during COVID as well, right?
Yeah, I think
I might be wrong.
So I think they had like a structure where they had the World Magic Cup, which I think ended sometime around 2017 or 2018. I think you're right. And then they ended it and moved to the new system where there was just a World Championship. Like before, so I think in the beginning there was, I think up until 2011 there was a World Championship and a Team Championship on the same like event. And then in 2011 they split it, and in 2018 or something they abandoned the Team World Championship, or the World Magic Cup, and only did the World Championship and the Pro Tour. And then I think then they incepted Arena, and that was the point where they changed the branding to call it like Mythic Championship, which then like made things confusing, which was the ones that were arena based, which one was the ones that were, because it sounded basically, they were called like basically the same thing. I think it was like Mythic Championship and Mythic Invitational, and then and I think that's kind of like the point where everything started to change. But I think Wizards was already back then not that high on like competitive Magic anymore. The focus was shifted towards like arena and online gaming. So they were not that high on the Pro Tour. So it was kind of once like COVID hit and like everything shut down, they were like, they didn't really have like a big reason to rebuild it. And now post COVID, they basically just rebuilt the absolute minimum in some ways. Like, I mean, they have their competitive circuit that allows them to continue to have a very simple system, competitive gameplay in the stores, and like across the regions, and they have to feed into the Pro Tour, but they don't have much else apart from this. Especially on the store level, they don't seem to be wanting any sort of competitive play anymore. But
for sure. Yeah. I guess it's hard as well, because so like in the instance with the Unity League, it's primarily being run by players that are passionate about the game. And although WotC is being, a lot of the employees at WotC are very passionate about Magic the Gathering, at the end of the day, it's owned by Hasbro, who have shareholders. So there's always the whole situation of kind of like, well, what's the reward financially? Because it is all about numbers. And it's actually something I'm going to be going very in depth in another podcast episode, kind of in a few weeks, where we're going to be talking about the impact of Universes Beyond. But all the store owners I've spoken to recently have said Final Fantasy was their most their best weekend ever. In some cases of stores that have been open for a decade, so. It's obviously making a lot of money at the store level, which obviously then means it makes a lot of money at shareholder level, which is kind of what is being looked for. So I guess I know you're the founder of the league. Who else is kind of behind the league? Are you? I don't actually know this, so it's a bit of a dangerous question. Are you appeasing to shareholders as well, or is it strictly a kind of passion project by the players for the players?
I mean. So we did found a company officially, and me and together with 3 other friends, we put in the required amount of about 20,000 euros to get this kind of like project off the ground. But like in reality, it's more of a passion project. Like none of us is making any money. We're losing a lot of money. Like we expect to basically lose all of these 20,000 euros in the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beside me, I have Antoine Albertelli. He does. He's living currently in Poland, and he's judging there. And he's working for Google, and he's like a very very good software engineer. He's like behind of all the the infrastructure that you see. Like he powers the website, though he makes all the hard decisions. Me personally, I'm more of like the front end guy. Like I do all the graphics, most of them, and I mean none of us are like the best graphics designer in that sense. So the visuals, I know we can still learn a bit, but yeah. And then we have Dejin. Dejin Ree, he's the third founder. He does like a bit of like everything, like in terms of like logistics, getting products, sending products, but also like some flyers and customer support and things like that. Like if you have a question, chances are high that you'll be talking to Dejin if you don't understand anything about the league. And then we have a third guy, Christoph. He's not that involved. He's like more of a consultant in that sense. Like he has like experience of founding like many companies, and he's also like an avid Magic and Lorcana player. So
nice. He's familiar with the TCG kind of universe. Yeah, I mean he's like the person when I have like legal questions or when we like have strategic questions, like which markets to go into and things like that. Because like kind of like maybe this is like a good point to maybe go a bit more into our. Or do you have any questions around our? Did I miss? No. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, like, what do we plan to do with this project? Kind of like, I mean, as you said, like, competitive play is not the easiest way to like make money. So, yeah, I think our primary goal would be to just kind of get a collaboration with one of the larger publishers. So if it not be Wizards of the Coast, then maybe one of the other ones that exist, like Lorcana, for example. And kind
of unify a system for that TCG effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to do like more than just a system. We kind of see ourselves as kind of like an organized play as a service. So we run the organized play one end to end basically for a publisher. That's kind of like the vision of kind of our company, that where we see the most potential. And this includes like everything from like coverage, but also like articles and like just results, deck lists, kind of like all the things that you kind of like need to have like an ecosystem of like running a tournament series, and like handle like all the like communication with the stores, which is like quite complicated. And we've seen like in practice like many of the publishers are like sometimes struggling with it.
I think it's a great idea as well, because I can't remember if I spoke to you a little bit in London at Axion about it. Not London, Birmingham. But Flesh and Blood is a game I've kind of dipped my toe into a little bit recently, and I know they are currently doing end-to-end event, event organization as a company themselves, in terms of like the judges are employed by the company, that they're funding the events, and obviously I think that system is causing them to gain traction because they can control the quality of the events, because they're more, it's one company doing all of it, right, in terms of like deck lists, websites, etc. So I think there is a huge benefit to the other card games, be it Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Lorcana, Magic, taking up that kind of being able to use the league as a service for the entire kind of organized play platform would be hugely beneficial, especially for players, because I think that's where it stands out the most, is having the fact that, taking a typical Magic situation right now, if the Pro Tour's on, I can view decklist information on the official WotC website. If it's not a Pro Tour and it's an RC, I then have to go to MTG Top 8 or Goldfish or Melee, or what I mean. There's so many more layers to kind of getting information, and equally as well, like even entering tournaments can become a bit of a headache, right? Because you're jumping between so many different places to get your information and so on. So yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea that can be used very powerfully to kind of promote products at the end of the day, because that is all TCGs are. It's kind of, the competitive scene is there, as well as the, Commander in the case of Magic, to drive sales of the product. So I think utilizing tools to be able to do that as the companies makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about it, I think the big selling point about the Unity League basically is, like, if you think if Magic was like only an online game, like let's take like Arena, it's relatively simple to have like a ladder or some sort of ranking system built into the software where that tracks players, and you can have a tournament system across the globe, and everything works like through software. When you run a physical product like Magic the Gathering or any other kind of board game, actually in practice, if you want to have some sort of like connection to your customers, it's like much harder because you don't necessarily have their email addresses that you can just send them updates to. Like, it's hard to keep in touch, to keep them engaged with your product than it is online in some ways. And I think that's kind of like where really the strength comes from, that we believe that we understand really well, because we are players. We build a product by the players, for the players. We understand what they want, and we can build something that makes them really engaged and, yeah, helps them to kind of like to make sure the experience of playing Magic and also spending money in Magic worthwhile. And yeah, because that, I think, is like the difficult part, because like, yeah, I mean, if you have a physical product like a card game, like how can you keep in touch with your users?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And so in terms of the support of the league as well at the moment, format wise, I think you mentioned Modern and Pauper are kind of the primary drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top 4 competitive formats at the moment are Modern, by far the most popular one. Then you have Standard, which is very popular, and Limited. I think Limited is still a bit more popular, but it's more of a casual format than a competitive format these days, I think. It's a bit less competitive. And then I think you have Pauper and Dual Commander, and Legacy, of course. Legacy is, I think, still a bit more popular than Pauper and Dual Commander. Yeah, but kind of like our goal is also to like focus on tournaments, formats that are a bit overlooked by Wizards of the Coast. In particular, Pauper has like a very, very huge followings in some countries like Italy, Poland, Czechia, things like countries like those. And since the decks are very cheap, there's like basically no support by Wizards. I mean, there's no official Pauper events. They have the Pauper board, I think, that makes the decision. So they have some legs in it, but the support is relatively small. So that's why we have the Pauper as one of our formats for our big finals. And yeah,
I noticed you didn't mention another format that I think WotC have kind of left by the wayside in Pioneer. Just to go on a bit of a tangent though, do you, because it's a topic I always like to discuss because I'm pretty passionate about it. Do you think the separation of formats has caused this kind of issue with competitive, where numbers are kind of dwindling a little between specific formats? Because I'll always point out that most card games that have been successful only have one format that's supported, and it means that all the players have to play one format. Whereas obviously, I know at my local game store in Norwich in the UK, when they used to run Pioneer, Modern and Standard, it just cannibalized, like, because there's 3 events every week, it just kind of cannibalizes. And I've always been kind of a believer in just have one format and really push it hard. And I know we're beyond that with Magic because it's too late. but what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Well, I think every format kind of like has a uniqueness. I think what Wizards wants with having all of these different formats is basically, once a player gets tired of one format, they just move on to another format, and they don't lose them as a customer. Instead of like going to like another card game where they no longer spend money on Magic, basically they have another format. That's, I think, at least the logic behind it. But I think in practice also, like, mean, as long as people want to play a format and pay money for a format, it kind of has to be supported by Wizards to some degree. Like they have to like maintain a ban list and things like this. Otherwise, it just goes away. And some players just want to play one format only, and they just refuse to play another format. And I mean, that's everyone's decision. But if this is the case, you just kind of have to support it as well. Otherwise, they just go away, I guess.
Yeah.
They just leave.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It is a weird one because I know, obviously, Pokemon is kind of, the most successful TCG, which obviously is helped by the fact that it has huge IP in other areas like video games and the anime as well. But I know they have an kind of an extended format. And I don't think I've ever seen any store support it at all. It's just kind of one of those, it's left by the wayside and they just push standard. And it's obviously worked quite well in the fact that, having constant rotation and having players constantly having to buy back into new cards pushes it. But I guess they've had the help of the collectability side from the fans of, the other realms, like the video game and stuff. Because decks are so much cheaper as well, right? Like, it's a weird one.
I mean, decks tend to be cheaper the more rotating the format is, because otherwise it's not affordable, right?
Yeah.
But I think in practice, I'm not a super I'm not an expert on like the Pokemon market, but the way that I've experienced it in Switzerland at least is it's like competitive Pokemon play is like almost extinct these days. Like it's
really?
very, very, very small. Yes, there's a very, very, very small scene. While Magic is still, I would say, at least 20 times probably as big in terms of like actual in-store gameplay, as far as I know.
No, that's
when I tried to
interesting.
When I tried to play Pokemon like a few years back, there was just no place to go. It was really hard to like find a place where I could go every week and just play some games. It just was really hard. I mean, I think these days it's a bit better still, but yeah. And I think personally, also for me myself, I think the cost of having to buy new cards every rotation was also like a big reason why I switched away from Magic, switched away to Magic like in the end. And I think only the people that really can like afford this type of spending, or like that like the playstyle of having a rotating format, they will just stay and the rest will just move on. And so I think, as far as when I talk to like local stores, I think 90% of the Pokemon players, they just collect the cards. They don't actually play them.
It's super interesting how it varies, because I played Pokemon a year ago just to try it, and I hated the game, so I stopped playing it very quickly. But finding somewhere to play it in the UK is like the amount of players at the game stores is insane. There's two stores very local to me that get, between the two of them, they get about 50 to 60 players every Friday night, just playing comp Pokemon, which is mad, really. And I do think the game's terrible, which makes me sad, because I like, it's always nice to play other games sometimes, and I'd hope that, because it's supported in my area, Pokemon would be an option, but the game is just so, I don't know. It's not being able to interact on your opponent's turns is kind of a deal breaker, I think, for me, when it comes to card games.
Yeah, I mean, I think each of the card games caters to like different types of
audiences.
Audiences. So, I mean, if you're like a very competitive player, of course, games like Flesh and Blood that were designed to be very competitive and only focus around this and have like very good organized play are probably more interesting for you to play than a game like Pokemon, which is honestly more focused around collecting the cards as well, but also like kits to play it, and more this aspect is like a bit less competitive, and you can also like see it in terms of like the rules of the game, that they're just like not being able to interact in your opponent's turn is like think a conscious decision, because it just makes the game easier for
people to pick up and
younger people to pick up, younger players. So
no, it
makes sense
that you know, as you say, there's different games for everyone. I think that is the most important part of it, really. But something you mentioned there about kind of being able to use your cards more long term and not having the rotation, I know that's something that puts a lot of people off standard in Magic the Gathering specifically, because the Eternal formats, you know, your deck is your deck. As someone that started playing Magic before the Modern Horizons era, how do you think Modern Horizons has kind of affected the scope of Magic in terms of that kind of affordability as an Eternal player?
Well,
I mean, yeah, it's a big question. It's a big question.
I would say, how did it change the format? I think in some ways it helped the format a lot. I mean, we've been talking about and maybe I just have to go back to Pioneer actually quickly for a second. Pioneer, Wizards tried to like make Pioneer happen for a very, very long time, and the format was always kind of like people didn't like it much. And the reason for this is just because if you print standard power level cards, what happens is just that you get, over time, the more and more sets come out, you will get more powerful combos, but you have standard level answers to those combos. And for this reason, it's really hard to build any kind of control-ish deck, because like all of your answers are just subpar to the combos and like interactions and like threats that exist. And Modern kind of had the same problem up until the point where Modern Horizons came out, because then you had like the forces in the first Modern Horizons set, which helped like a lot. Then you had like Counterspell on all the pitch elementals. I mean, the Grief was like one of the ones that was kind of like a combo card as well, so maybe we take away that one. But like generally speaking, like the pitch elementals are still great in like stopping people to combo. Like for example, if you have a Solitude, it's really hard for people to like kill you with the Prowess deck. Like it's just how it is. And in terms of that, it fixed Modern like a lot. Like I think in the past, it was a big deal that kind of like Modern felt like very similarly, where the answers were like not that great compared to the threats. But like in recent years, this has improved a lot. But it also means, of course, it feels like a bit more of like a rotating format, because in the past you would only get like some small amount of new tools, which meant like all of the decks kept playable for a very, very long time. And I mean, they fell out of tier 1 maybe, but you could still like reasonably play them as a tier 3 deck. Well, these days, if you come with like Hardened Scales, for example, it just doesn't feel like a deck, because your opponent plays Wrath of the Skies and your deck falls to this one card, and it just feels completely unfair. Yeah. And you just cannot justify anymore to play any of these old decks. So it's very different in the sense that it feels like a rotating format now, but it has also like solved like some of the issues. Like we've seen like a lot more interactive gameplay. That said, I feel like Modern Horizons 3 still has like some design issues fundamentally. For example, I think Flage is like primary reason why the format is like so much geared towards combo decks, because like the Boros Energy is like such a good aggro deck and such a good mid-range deck in like one deck. It's just impossible to build like a better aggressive or mid-range deck in the format. And since the only thing that you can do is play hate cards to interact on like removal, it just means you're really susceptible to combos in some ways, and the games really, really evolve around, can you draw the random cyber card or not? And that makes the play experience, in my opinion, not so great, because I mean, your choice is currently in the top decks is either you play the mid-range deck, Boros Energy, or you play a combo deck, more or less. And all of the other decks are kind of subpar. I mean, you can play Frog. Frog is basically the opposite. Like, it loses to energy, in my opinion, but it can win against the combo decks because you have so much interaction. But I still don't like you just can't play any other mid-range deck or control deck unless you play Flage. It's just not possible. Like it's just impossible to beat this card on any scale of like late game. It's just just the way it is.
I think it's interesting because I do think although they are the top tier, the examples you gave are the kind of the highest level of gameplay. I do think Modern's pretty wide open for those slightly lower tier decks at the moment to kind of do okay. I think or at least the meta's quite varied at the moment compared to what it was, a couple months ago. I think the ban of Amped Raptor helped kind of hamstring energy a little bit. It's still probably too good. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I in terms of Modern Horizons, I've always been a fan of the level of rotation it brings, because I think otherwise you get too much stagnation and people get bored. Similar to kind of like the Pioneer situation when there aren't enough new cards coming in that are as powerful, because you're cherry picking the best standard cards from the Pioneer format. That it's not going to change too much, and that does create kind of a boring play experience as well. I mean, it's not something I've ever even thought of before, but do you think there's a world where rather than printing Modern Horizons with new cards, they could have kind of cherry picked the best of old standard? Like an extreme example would be, like, obviously they printed Force of Negation, which is a very popular card in Modern Horizons. Would a reprint of Force of Will kind of, solved some of the issues that Force of Negation solved? Force of Will's probably too strong, but there's probably examples of other cards that could get reprinted rather than creating new design space.
So you mean like that there's like some cards you can reprint from older formats that
so like Modern Horizons instead is kind of, rather than new cards, it's only a reprint set, but those cards become legal in Modern. Do you think that would have been a more appealing proposition as a player, or worse?
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I still like the Modern Horizon set. I think I like the breath of fresh air every now and then in the Modern set. I think also seeing like completely new cards. And I mean, the Modern Horizon sets are always like some amount of reprints and some amount of like reprints of like Legacy or Commander and some amount of new cards. But I still feel like there's like a lot of cards. Like these days they print like a lot of cards which have fundamentally flawed design. For example, Kappa Cannoneer, in my opinion, is one of these cards. Like the card literally reads, you cannot destroy or like target this card more or less unless you pay 5 mana at least. And then you cannot block this card ever, and you die in 2 hits. So either you just immediately win, or you're just gonna die to this one card, and you cannot interact like at all. Like I don't understand why having such a card be legal like makes anything better. I mean, the card is like not even like that broken in that sense. Like it's not the best card in the format or whatever. I'm just saying like fundamentally the card doesn't make sense to me. Like it's just not interesting gameplay. Like same with like Wrath of the Skies. The card is like, it just literally says, oh, this is a main deckable Wrath that just destroys some type of decks completely, and you cannot play around the card in any way. Like it just I think generally speaking, I like the Modern Horizons, but what I don't like about it is basically these types of cards. Or I mean Flage, for example. It just means like Flage is a card for me that just says you just cannot beat it in the late game. Like it's just better. It's just the best late game threat, and there's just nothing else you can be doing except playing blue and white and red cards, because that's high demanding mana cost. That it just just polarizes the metagame around these things. And I think if you take away some of those things, I think the format would greatly improve and also just be much more fun to play. I mean, I think also I heard like a lot of people be very unhappy after the Breach ban with the format that was left afterwards. I mean, Breach was in some ways, of course, like a way too powerful deck, but I honestly enjoyed more playing that format than the current format, because
that's interesting.
It felt like, but I was also a Breach player, to be fair.
Sure. I think Breach as well, though, I think falls under the Breach specifically as a card kind of falls foul of some of the it's not necessarily like a Flage or Wrath of the Skies, but it's a problem card in that it screws with the design of every single set getting made because of the recurrence nature of it. So there's always the potential of it being broken. And I think that's like, I don't understand the decision with Foundations to print Omniscience, because it's a card that will always become more problematic the more cards you print, and you always have to be mindful of, oh well, this card's in the format, so now we need to be careful about everything else. So yeah, I do think it is interesting, some of the decisions, and I think the biggest one that we haven't actually spoken about is the One Ring. Was obviously, you know, the fact that Boros Energy started playing the One Ring was when you kind of realized that every deck needed to play the One Ring, and thus that card is just a problem. Yeah.
I mean, it still needs some. The One Ring still has like some design constraints. Like, for example, I tried to play the One Ring in Breach decks, and I didn't like it like that much because, or at least initially, because the card has that, like, you have to like build your deck in a very certain way. Like if you just play the One Ring, draw a card and draw 2 cards, like it means like you spend a lot of resources. If you front play creatures in the meantime, you still have the One Ring in play, you will lose the game very quickly. Like you need some sort of like cards to catch up. Like Solitude, for example, was a card that was played, or I don't know, you assemble Tron and then play like a big Haymaker or something like this. And yeah, Boros Energy just had like kind of this board presence, which made the card be good as well in Boros Energy. But yeah, regardless, I agree. Like just usually when people start to play, there's like a few warning signs that I saw like, of course of the years, and when that are like signs of something being too strong. For example, they used to play Deathrite Shaman in burn decks, which was just a good sign that
shouldn't
maybe
work.
you should not. It should be something like, yeah, it's like Goblin Guide. They go like turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, turn 2 Goblin Guide, Eidolon, pass the turn or something like this.
Yeah. It's bizarre. I think that was the thing for me with the One Ring. He unfortunately he didn't win, but he came second. One of my teammates from Templar, Todd, he came second in the anniversary Mega Modern. He actually lost to Dylan, who I know top 8'd the RC recently, the modern one, playing Breach actually. Yeah, no. So or was it Dylan? I can't remember. But basically, in that run of the Mega Modern, he played a Sacred Foundry on one against another teammate of ours on Amulet, and used a Static Prison to get rid of the Amulet, you know, leaving energy there. And then they played the land that makes an energy and an Amped Raptor, and hit a One Ring on turn 2. And you're just kind of like, this shouldn't happen, and this card is a problem, because you've effectively just kind of, yeah, you can't kill me this turn, and now I'm just drawing, and yeah, good luck. So it is crazy, the things that can happen, and when you start to see those warning signs in a format, for sure. Which I do think, as much as I know you were a Breach gamer, kind of Breach definitely was approaching that level. I think the meta share was crazy at the some of the last events before he got banned.
No. I mean, I'm not saying I would have definitely banned Breach. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have banned it. I'm just saying like I definitely enjoyed like the overall format, the way it shaped out like much more, because I mean Breach was a very interactable deck. You could interact with it, and it was like less of like those all-in combo decks back in the time. I feel like a bit less. I mean, it's still quite a lot of all-in combo decks, but yeah, I feel like I don't know.
I do agree.
Like right
Breach
now,
was super interesting. Even to play against, you know, it was quite an impressive deck, but navigating that matchup was an interesting, you know, play experience. It's just there was too much of it, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'm not saying like I wouldn't have banned it. I'm just saying I like the format before better in some ways than the format now. I mean, we'll see how it evolves, but I feel like probably not gonna improve much unless there are some bannings or there's a new set that brings a lot of modern cards. But that I think is not going to happen until yet another year.
Yeah, I think our next Horizon set should be next year. I think they usually skip a year, don't they? It's kind of one, and then
Yeah.
Oh no, actually they didn't, because they did. It was Lord of the Rings, and then so it was like MH2, Lord of the Rings, MH3. I think was that 3 years in a row.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah,
But I guess
Lord of the Rings was not that much of a there was only like maybe 10 cards you can play, and most of them were like the cyclers.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
But the one card, the one ring was very impactful, of course.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, other than that, like still the impact was not that big. I mean, I feel like Modern Horizons 3 like really transformed the metagame. Like basically, like most decks only exist because of Modern Horizons 3 these days.
Yeah, I do think that is the biggest downside to the Horizon sets. I feel that MH2 was very much more it gave a crutch to a lot of decks and a boost to certain archetypes. It didn't fully change the entire landscape. Obviously, the Murktide deck with Ragavan and DRC was made, but beyond that, most of the archetypes that were popular just got helped out by MH2 cards. Whereas, as you say, MH3 has kind of completely changed the landscape of a lot.
I think. Yeah, MH2 was also interesting. Like, it took people some time to like figure out the format. Like it took really a while till people realized you could play like that Grief plus Ephemerate was a bad idea, but Grief plus Red with those Undying Malice types of effects was a great idea. It really took quite some time for people to realize this, and I think once, like in the times where people played a lot of Rhinos and Scam, I don't know, was also not the best format in my opinion. But
I've always
double Thoughtseize, turn one double Thoughtseize. I really didn't enjoy that much from the Grief players.
I've always been a little bit tinfoil hat on that format in particular, because I think it was Pro Tour Lord of the Rings that Scam won, and obviously off the back of that, Scam meta share went through the roof, and everyone started picking it up, and it dominated. Even like my local RCQs, it was dominating. There were so many Scam players. I was playing Scam. I qualified for Ghent, I think it was, playing Scam. But I remember that Pro Tour top 8 had, I think, 4 Tron players. And I'm always kind of like, if Tron had one, would Tron have been just, because I think players do tend to kind of magpie a little bit and follow what's done well, and you kind of think, would Scam have got that out of hand if it hadn't had so many eyes on it as a result of that Pro Tour? But I guess you never know, right?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, like, putting 4 decks to the top 8 is still like a big achievement. So yeah, but yeah, maybe people really just look for the one deck that is very on the top. But
especially when it's as you say, as easy as just Thoughtsseizing someone on turn 1 twice.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Tron is. I mean, Tron has like similar things. Like it's not as hard as Breach, for example. Like Breach really felt like a deck in some ways, where like if you would like mess up like one thing tiny, then we would just like throw away the match because of that. So like in those ways, Tron and Scam definitely have like the easy games where sometimes you just scam them.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So I guess I'm conscious of time, because I know we don't have too long left. So kind of going back, I know we spoke about it at the start in terms of participating in the league and some of the kind of options available to stores with the point system. Can you go into a little bit more detail on how to participate? I guess the one I'm more interested in is how to participate as a player, because I think that's the big way to drive your local store to support it from a player perspective.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, I guess the thing that you want to be doing is go to unityleague.gg, spelled Unity League.
Oh, and every link referenced will definitely be below for you to click as well.
Good. So, and then you can sign up to create a player account, and there you will find ways to make sure to connect your companion and melee accounts to it, so your points are correctly imported to your name. And then, once you have that, basically every organizer that participates will, when they upload the results, it will automatically show up in your result or like player profile and give you the points that you want. But yeah, I mean, this means that if you want to collect points at your local FNM or pre-release or RCQ, you have to let your store know about it and tell them that they can sign up. Otherwise, we can't award you any points, unfortunately. But yeah, many of the larger events already participate. So if you go there, you automatically collect points.
Nice.
I think that's roughly it from the player side. What you
so in terms of the store side, because obviously I know a lot of this is going to be player driven in terms of convincing smaller stores, because obviously bigger events are a different kettle of fish, but in terms of getting your store to kind of support the weekly FNM events with it, what's kind of involved from the store side of uploading those results?
So, I mean, we have a very intricate software that basically allows you to export the standings from Companion, or the tool is called Event Link from the store side, and then upload it to our site, and then it automatically reports the results for the players. So it's really like not much of work. It's like 10 seconds per event or something. You just like click download, upload, done.
Nice.
And we have like an event calendar where you basically just can advertise your event, and we have like an event search where players will find your events and they can filter for the different categories. And for like the store level, we as I said, primarily have like the two categories, which are called local, which is like for the FNM, as I said, and regional, which is more like competitive events. Like RCQs, but you can also like host any other like bit more competitive event as a regional.
Like a higher stakes kind of a few boxes on the line kind of level event.
Yeah. Like a store championship, for example, or like a 1K event, or some sort of like open series, or like some of like the more competitive Action Now ends, for example, could be like an example.
Yeah.
And then we basically have our own type of like kit where we send you a product. This event is called like a qualifier, or European Unity League qualifier. And as the name says, basically the winner will directly qualify for our €20,000 finals, the European Magic Cup. And we also send you a bunch of products as prizes, which is like a trophy, some altered flooded strands. They're like altered with a sleeve. And for the top four, and there's like some products from a sponsor, Heavy Play, like deck boxes, a playmat, and things like that.
Nice.
Yes, and one of these kits costs €300, but I can assure you that the products you're getting are more value than you actually pay for the kit.
No, so, that's always cool from player perspective as well. Like having that as pricing available is nice, and again, just all of this detail is available on the website, which is in the link below as well.
So if your store wants to sign up, basically those are the free options. Like local is like 1 times multiplier, then more competitive events is like regional 3 times multiplier, and then we have the qualifiers, which are 5 times, and then we have like some of the bigger conventions, which are called the Grand Prix, which are 6 times multiplier, and basically that defines how many points you collect.
Nice.
Maybe I think we haven't touched on this, like the way that points are actually distributed. It's maybe I should reference this quickly. So it's just basically your match points will be the points that you get, which is like 3 points per win, 1 point per draw, and you get also 3 points just for participating, so like a free win. And additionally, if you reach like the top finishers, which is usually like the top 8, if you have like a top 8 or I don't know, top 16 at like larger events, or top 32 at the really large events, you will get like a fixed amount of points instead based on your final rank. So like so like if you're like the winner of like some of like the largest, like if you're the regional champion, you'll get about 500 points or so, I think.
Which is a lot of wins at an FNM.
Yes, it's a lot of it's winning a lot of FNMs, but yeah, it might sound like a lot, but like in the end, you need to get to the top 40 or something of your national leaderboard, which is usually like relatively easy to achieve if you grind a few weekly events and play a few RCQs. Like you catch up quite quickly to the big players.
Nice,
if you do.
And I guess in terms of I know the events you guys are running yourselves are kind of modern and pauper based. If a store's running sealed or draft on a Friday night as their format? Is that still eligible for the league, or is
Yes,
yeah?
Yes, it's we allow any formats. We basically want our goals are like any event should participate. It doesn't matter what the format is; it should participate. Be that multiplayer commander, be that cube draft. It doesn't matter. Just whatever you want. You just need to have some sort of, tournament like results. Like some person needs to win games and some person needs to lose games.
Yeah.
But if it qualifies on that, then you have like you can report the results in some ways. Feel free to do it. And
awesome.
the only thing you need to do is you need to sign up as an organizer, and to like your details of your store or club or company or whatever you are. Like we also allow like any kind of associations or clubs or whatever to participate. You just sign up with an account, and then you can create the events on our calendar and upload the results at the end of your events.
Nice. Well, we'll call it there, and I want to thank you again for taking the time. It really is appreciated, and it's super interesting to get more of an insight into, because I think it's cool to see a product, right? But then to understand why someone has got to that point in terms of why the service exists is always really interesting. And I definitely think that the by the players for the players definitely sums it up the best in terms of the Unity League.
I mean, that's kind of like wherever I come from. I just I kind of like miss the old times of like all of these Grand Prix and having like also like competitive local scenes. And we have really seen this like kind of like come back in Switzerland over the past 2 years. Like you can basically play a competitive event on every weekend and like in every city. It's kind of crazy.
Nice.
And we really hope to bring this back in Europe and hopefully maybe in the whole world in a few years.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's definitely what we want as players, for sure. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for having me. It was a pleasure on my side as well.